Like so many cross stitchers, I love the stitching. I don't necessarily love the finishing. And so that's why whenever I can, I try and finish my projects in the way that is the quickest and the easiest. And that's what we're doing today. So today I'm going to be trying to finish this little piece, which is called Feather for Fairy Tales. It's an RTO kit, and we stitched this in a previous video, which I will link in the description bar. And I'm going to be trying to finish this piece in this little picture frame here. So this is just a very simple Nerge picture frame with the little hanging hook, I suppose, on the top, or the little hanging ring, I should say. And I think these look really, really sweet. You can hang them, you can kind of stand the piece up and lean it against something. They're really inexpensive, and finishing the piece into one of these isn't really that difficult or time consuming because you don't have to deal with a huge amount of lacing as you would when using a standard frame. So you will need a few little pieces if you're going to follow this method. First thing is thread. I'm using just standard stranded cotton, and that will just be to tighten our fabric around our frame. And then for that, we'll also need a needle. So I'm just using a size 24 Bohan regular cross stitch needle. And then for the backing, now usually you would use felt to back this, and actually felt is ideal because it just has a great structure, a great weight, but I didn't have any felt that I liked. So I've instead gone for this really light craft cotton, which I think is going to look really nice because it's navy and it's got the stars, and I just think kind of matches. However, it is, like I said, quite light and not really ideal for this. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit more substantial by using some of this stuff. This is just fusible interfacing, so the iron-on interfacing, and I guess it's like a medium stiffness. It's just some that I had lying around, and yeah, I'm going to put this onto that and then see how it goes. And then finally, we also have a scissors, fabric scissors to cut our fabric and our interfacing, a pencil just to measure around the interfacing, some sewing thread that is kind of a matching colour, and finally we have a sewing needle. So now we're ready to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is to measure my interfacing and to cut my interfacing. Of course, if you were using felt, then this would be your felt and not interfacing, of course. So I have the inner ring of my hoop. So here's the outer, here's the inner, and just with my pencil, I'm just going to draw a line around the outside of that. Maybe do it with my left hand, the outside of that ring. So now we have our ring. It's not perfect, but it'll do, and I'm just going to cut it out. So we now have our circle of interfacing, and because this is fusible interfacing, it has like a fabricy side, and then it has the side with the kind of glue on it, and that's the shiny side. I'm sorry, I'm not much of a sewer or a sewist, so whatever the proper term for that is, maybe you can let me know. But there's basically a fabricy side, which is the side we want out, and then the shiny side is the side that has the glue on it, and that's the side we're going to put onto our fabric. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my fabric with the back up, and then I'm going to bring this all to the ironing board. I'm going to just iron out my fabric so that it's smooth, and then I'm going to stick my circle of interfacing sticky side down, so glue side down, until it's like this, and then I'm going to iron over it, and that will hopefully fuse to the fabric. But it's important that our fabric, as you can see, is quite creased, and it's important that our fabric is smooth first. So that's what we're going to do. Now that we have our circle of fabric backed with our interfacing, it's time to move back to our actual cross stitch piece, and we need to get this piece to fit into this hoop. And the way that I like to do this is by setting down the outer hoop on a flat surface, putting our cross stitch piece backside up, down kind of into that hoop, and then using our inner hoop to kind of push it down a little bit like that, and then flipping it over and seeing how it looks. So I think that looks pretty good, but you know, maybe this bit might look better over here. I actually think it looks nice like this, so I'm going to leave it exactly like this. But most of the time you would have to kind of, you know, take it out, try it again, just trial and error until you find what looks the best for you. Now I am just trimming off some of the excess fabric. I don't like to trim off too much at the start because of course you can always take more away, but you can't put it back. So I tend to just give it a little trim and then see how we are and maybe trim a little bit more off. Of course, we're really focusing on the corners here because that's where the kind of bulk of our fabric is. Just about 1 meter of DMC. It doesn't really matter the colour, and unlike with cross stitch where we would, you know, start separating these ends and you know, pulling out one strand at a time, we're not going to do that with this. We're going to use the entire strand of or the entire thread. So I like to start about 0.5 centimetre to 1 centimetre in here, let's say, and then I'm going to pull it through, but I am going to leave a tail. So I think about that much will do the job. And then basically I'm just going to start putting a running stitch all the way around the edge of my piece, trying to keep relatively equidistant from the edge of the fabric. So I'm going to finish this and then I will come back to you. Now that all our running stitches are placed, as you can see, it's just a matter of turning over our piece of work, finding the two ends, and then with one in each hand, just giving it a bit of a pull, and it will pull in all the fabric, and then you can just put a knot. Nice and secure. So this is what our piece looks like when the excess fabric has been pulled in at the back. And now it is time to trim these ends and move on to the next stage. Now it's time to stitch the backing onto our piece. And for this, I am using just regular sewing thread. You could, of course, use embroidery thread or stranded cotton if you wish. I just prefer to use sewing thread. I just find it a little bit easier for this job. But having said that, I think the cotton would probably look a little bit better anyway. So I have just anchored in my length of thread. So just anchored it in there to the fabric of the cross stitch piece. I'm sorry about this little thing. It keeps making noise when I put it down. And then I'm going to place my backing fabric over it. And what you're trying to do, and it can be a little bit tricky for the first few stitches, but you're basically trying to sew them together. So what you're going to do is we're going to use a blanket stitch for this. So we're going to insert our needle down here, and then we want it to go through our actual fabric as well. So through the backing fabric and through the Aida of the piece. So we're going to just insert it there, bring it up flush, or as flush as you can with the hoop. And then of course you want your thread to catch in that loop. So you see the way we have a loop here. So I'm just going to pop my needle through the loop and pull our thread through. It's just catching there. And then that's going to secure. Then we're going to move over, and we're trying to keep kind of equal distance. So this, this distance here, we want to be the same as this distance here. Doesn't have to be perfect, and I can tell you that my sewing leaves quite a lot to be desired, but we're going through our fabric, through our interfacing, and then again, come on little chap, doesn't want to focus as usual. Do you want to focus? So through our front fabric, through our interfacing, and then through our Aida, popping our needle out of the fabric flush, pulling it through. We have a loop here, and we're going to pull that through the loop. So I'm just going to continue with my blanket stitch all the way around until I get to the end. So our fabric is secured onto the back of our piece. It's not absolutely perfect, but it'll do the job. And this is what the final little project looks like. And that's taken me maybe half an hour and it's done. So for these small little projects, especially ones, of course, that are circular, I think these little frames are absolutely ideal, and you don't have to deal with all that lacing and all those different challenges that comes with a proper framing job. So for now, once again, thank you for watching and take care.